Congratulations.
Thank you.
You got a new exciting job. You're going to be the lead color commentator for the CW.
It's like a little measuring stick. I come on RealPod with any career update, any life update, really, I feel like.
I know. And I just thought that it's so important because I think a lot of people struggle with their careers or knowing what their passion is in life or trying to figure it out, especially former athletes. And you have been on quite the journey since you finished playing football. And I feel like I've seen all of the behind the scenes of that on like some of the really tougher days and weeks, and then also like the higher highs. So I just thought it would be great to sit down and kind of talk about this decision and what led you here, and hopefully inspire some other people to follow their dreams.
Yeah, no, seriously, it's like a full circle moment. I had someone for the first time in a while reference the real pod we did at your parents' house in 2020 where I started crying. It was they told me about it, they watched it or they listened to it last week, and it was the first time I had someone reference it in probably years, low key. And so it was like perfect timing. I was like, I'm actually going on Vic's pod next week to talk about the next career evolution. So it's perfect timing.
Okay, so I think we should begin with what led you to give everyone a little summary of what happened right after football ended. When you went out to New York, let's talk a little about the social media and then the switch to real estate. Get us to the start of real estate.
So you're talking back in 2018 and then progress from there? Yeah, so I stopped playing football in February of 2019. And then at that point, I was making content and I'd made YouTube videos the football season prior, but for whatever reason, and we can get into this, but I just didn't feel like I was in a place to go full-time content creator at that point. I think it wasn't as viable of a career as it is now. I also think I had it in my mind that I wanted to be a more like white-collar job. Like if I'm not going to play football and I'm not going to be an NFL quarterback like I thought I was going to be my whole life, well, then I have to go down the white-collar path. And I had like my MBA and I had a grad degree from Pitt as well in marketing. So I just felt like I needed to go down that path. And I worked...
and I don't think you really wanted to spend 100% of your time around football.
Yeah. And I think because of that, well, it was football. And I also think I had insecurity around like, who am I to think that I could be a content creator? And why would people listen to me? And I didn't play at the most elite level. So why do I have the standing to, be talking about X's and O's every single day? And you're totally right. I think at that time too, I was a little bitter. I was a little frustrated that my career didn't work out as I'd hoped. And so to your point, I don't think I wanted to be around the game every single day and have that be my full-time gig. I needed to work through that over the next 6 years to get to that point.
And to anyone who is maybe unfamiliar with that, the episode Max was referencing is a Real Pod episode, and it's titled What Really Happened to the Nation's #1 Recruit, I believe. If you want to go back and listen to that, you can hear all about Max's football journey. And then we're basically picking up now with big career update.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to give people that context in case they want the full Max Browne experience.
Yeah, there's like a whole identity complex there. I was quarterback Max for my whole life up to that point. But yeah, so then I moved to New York. We did long distance. I was working on Gary Vaynerchuk's content team. I was on his content team. He also has a traditional ad agency that I got exposure to as well. So I got exposure to like traditional marketing.
Tell everyone how that job came about, because there are people who are like, the thing I thought I was going to do, it didn't work out. I have no idea what to do next. You did not have a resume. You did not have internships. I bet you didn't go to the career nights. Like, I don't think you were ever really thinking, what will my job be? Because it was I expect to make to the NFL. So you realize that's not happening. That can be a all weighing feeling for someone. Is I literally have no anything in the direction of a traditional job. So how did you think of Gary? How did you get a job with Gary? I hear that's pretty difficult.
Yeah. And it's funny because I had these degrees and I had, maxed out the school side of things, but then you get those degrees and it's like, all right, well, what next? And a piece of advice that stuck to me, and I give it to other people too, is if you don't know what you want to do, go work for someone who you admire, even if that's, your friend's dad kind of thing. And for me, that was Gary V at that time.
Or your friend's mom.
Or your friend's mom. There you go. Yep. Touche. But for me, that was Gary V at the time. I was waking up that fall of 2018. I'd listen to his podcast regularly. I'd watch his vlogs. I'd like to think at that time too, I could see where the puck was going in social media. I had some teammates that built brands and got tons of opportunities when I was in college because of social media. Again, I got my marketing master's at Pitt, so I was, exposed to that world, and I was like, that guy gets it. I want to go work for that dude. And funny enough, he's a huge Jets fan. My buddy and former teammate, the guy that beat me out when I was at USC, the whole reason I had to transfer to Pitt, the whole reason we had to do long distance, Sam Darnold, he was the starting quarterback of the Jets. He was able to get me an intro with Gary, and that's how the job happened. And I spent all of 2019 out there.
I love that. I think it just demonstrates the importance of networking, keeping good relationships with whether it's your teammates like Sam or your friends or the people you're in class with, and having the courage and confidence to reach out and ask for intros, ask for favors. I think there's just an aspect of going for it that, it then worked out and you had that first job.
Yeah, like never burn bridges. And I was there for basically 1 calendar year. So January of 2019 to December 2019. I had you back in the West Coast. I kind of in the back of my mind always knew that was a temporary move. I wasn't a New York guy per se, but then, I moved back to LA, was living with your folks, which was an awesome experience. And then the pandemic happened and all that. And I worked for a different content creator. Lewis Howes has a super popular podcast to this day, and I was his head of content. So it was a smaller team, similar industry, similar duties, but probably more responsibility, and had that job for 6 to 8 months and finally got to the point where I didn't like building other people's dreams and empire. I didn't like that feeling of every single day. It was kind of rinse or repeat. I was very much I had my 30 tasks for the day, and it was check the box. And at the end of the day, I wanted to build something for myself. And at that time, I still felt that I needed to play in this corporate world. I wasn't prepared to make the jump to content then, or jump to broadcasting full time then. And then I knew I wanted a more business development career, a career that's more relationship based. I'm a USC grad, so I kind of looked around. A lot of my peers were in commercial real estate, and I said, kind of had the itch to, I want to play in that world. I want to compete in that world. It felt like a lot of people that were having success were in that industry, had mentors kind of gearing me towards that industry. And then in 2021, I made the jump to commercial real estate.
Okay, so let's dive in there. Did any part of you think, wow, I'm going to be that former USC bro, I guess we live out here, but I'm gonna go in real estate and I'm gonna wear a tie every day, like all these frat guys? I do think the reason you didn't initially want to do that is because it felt a little vanilla. It felt a little tossed my hat in on a quote cooler life.
Totally. And when I was at SC, it felt like every kid's dad and mom was in commercial real estate on frat row. I just felt like that was industry. I had a lot of my close friends hop into commercial real estate right when I was done. That's kind of just part of the USC world. And to your point, when I was transitioning away from football into that first job, I was like, you know what? I don't want to do that. Everyone's doing that. But then fast forward 2 years, circle back around. I start staying in touch with mentors. The industry keeps coming up. And I'm like, you know what? There's a reason people dive into this industry. There's the opportunity, the ability to leverage relationships. Obviously, the money is a component to that. The opportunity. And so it kind of came full circle, but totally. I was like, gosh, I'm going to be another one of those guys who, was SC guy, sports football guy, classic broker. I got that many times. Oh, sports guy. Oh, perfect. He'd make the perfect broker. It was just a very classic move.
And how old were you when you were finishing with Lewis and transitioning?
25. And then I turned 26, right before I started commercial real estate.
There's a lot of people who feel that if they don't have their life figured out by 25 and they're not 3 years, 4 years down a career path and they didn't intern there, they feel very behind the 8 ball. You are 25, picking up the phone to switch from a marketing social media career to a new real estate career. I mean, how did you feel about that? Did you have any insecurities? Did you have any self-judgment? Because you actually, I think, did a beautiful job handling it. I'll let you speak to it. But just the other day, I spoke at an event and someone said, I'm 27 and I'm an intern and I graduated college late. You know, I didn't ask for whatever reason. And this is my life and this is my story. But I feel like I, at 27, should have all these things figured out.
Totally. This is a topic that, as you know, lights my heart up because I think it's so easy. And I've been at lunch conversations where, you know, if you're 50, 60 years old, it's so easy to be like, oh, you're so young. You're so young. And like, that is true. You have a lot of life left. But when you're in the saddle and you're 26 making a career pivot and you're 3 full years removed out of college, some of your friends are starting to make money and you're about to either start over or in a lot of athletes' case, for athletes listening to this, it's their first job out. And it is a huge hit to your ego. And I'd like to think I'm a low ego guy. But you're walking in there, and again, I'm starting at square one when, hey, I have 2 of my best buds are in commercial real estate 3 years ahead of me. And you got to put your pride aside. You got to take the long game of, hey, I might be behind now, but if we fast forward 5, 7, 9 years, it's a different story. I'm always saying go upside early on in your 20s before security, because at 23 versus 25 versus 27 versus 29, my mentality changed a lot. 23, you're fresh out of college, you're gung-ho, everyone's kind of excited about your career. 25, some portion of your friends have died off with their career momentum. People start getting married. 27, you got more people start getting married. It's no longer like, oh, wow, Max is getting married. Like, no, that's the norm. And then 29, people have kind of settled into what most people have settled into what their life is going to be. I think kids is maybe not in the equation as much. But those time blocks change the mentality a lot. And if you can early on go for the upside job and fail quickly of, hey, this path is not for me, or if you find it out and it does work, I think taking advantage of that phase rather than letting it linger and making that jump at 27, 29, 31, it's a lot harder when the world around you has leveled up. Yeah,
you make great points. And it makes me think too of like, just the pressure of wanting to be able to have that conversation with your family or with your Auntie Sue at Thanksgiving and like have your plan and be confident in what you're saying. And I think what we need more space for is people who are just still figuring it out or who want to pivot. Like, I mean, we're going to keep walking through your story, but like, you know, you started in this content, making these YouTube videos about football. You spent 3 years in real estate and then now you're back here. You know, so it's like, there's a fly in the studio.
Reminds me of our wedding day.
I know, we need to get him out of here. No, it reminds me of our wedding day. There was
our officiant had a fly on his forehead like the whole time.
I don't even remember because I was so in the moment of love, babe.
Sorry, I have field awareness.
But anyways, it can be a lot of pressure when people feel like they need to figure their life out for other people.
And that's the thing, like, we're always figuring it out. I have a funny feeling that when I sit down on this podcast for the 16th time when I'm 40, I'm going to still be figuring it out. And I look back and I think it's just different chapters, right? My high school football chapter was 10 out of 10. My college football chapter was not that way. My chapter with Gary working in New York was great in some respects, but I also didn't leverage that for the next opportunity. My real estate chapter, I think, was a great personal development for me. I think I realized, hey, I don't have to play in the white collar space to feel secure in who I am. And that chapter had downsides and upsides. And then now I'm going on the content creator chapter.
Okay. I'm really intrigued with this. You know, I don't have to be in this white collar job. I want to get there. Let's first spend some time talking about when you started in real estate. We just talked about how you were a few years behind your peers and people your age. What was your mentality going into real estate? Were you thinking, oh, this is going to be the rest of my life? How were you viewing it in relationship to the broadcasting you were always doing on the side, which I think everyone and myself included viewed it more of like a hobby or a fun passion project? I don't think 2 years ago I would have ever thought it would have been the number one. It was always the clear 2.5, 3. So when you start real estate, what are you thinking? Because your resume will say you've pivoted from marketing.
Yeah, I was thinking I am going to build my business. I was thinking very entrepreneurial, which is what commercial real estate brokerage is. I came in there 100% commission. I had a team around me, but 100% commission, which speaks to the upside conversation as well. And I said, I'm going to sit my ass at this desk. I'm going to make the calls. I'm going to make the outreach. I'm going to go to the coffees. I'm going to go to the lunch, and I'm going to build my book of business. I'm going to build my clients. And I understood it took a while to get going in commercial real estate brokerage. A lot of people say like it takes 3 years to get fully established, or 3 years to get fully confident, maybe a better way to word that. And so I was patient with myself. I made very little money my first year. I was fortunate enough to have the broadcasting income to supplement that, but I was patient. I was head down. I said, I'm in it for the long haul. And I was very much committed to this being my career indefinitely. I'd like to think I would say forever, but I'm also not naive to the fact that life changes and whatnot. But I was excited about the industry. It was cool to me. I think it's a phenomenal industry, but it also was tough, and I was ready to put my head down and do that. But I think the business development, the leveraging my relationships and being a more social, extroverted guy was something I was excited about, and the ability to build my book of business, not work for some huge entity. That was super exciting for me.
What was unique about it, though, was while you were doing that, which is a full-time gig, right, to take on your shoulders, you also are continuing in the fall broadcasting for outlets like Stadium and making appearances as the color commentator for Pac-12 networks. Why are you smiling?
Just you.
What, that I like know your life?
You're such a good interviewer. Like, it's so funny. Like, I see you just like when you're just like, snuggle up in the corner, and then you get here and you're like, you're so legit.
Oh my God. Well, it's easy because you're my husband. Okay, wait. You're going to make me bashful, and I'm not going to be able to be good. Okay.
What's your question?
My question, sir, is you were doing both things at once. So I saw that create a lot of anxiety in your life. I mean, I remember a fall where I don't believe you took a day off for months. And I also tried, as a mental health advocate, I was not trying to celebrate that. Like, I was trying to be really cautious of not being like, you work so hard and you're great. It's tough. Like, do I acknowledge your grind and that you would outwork anyone? Yes. But do I want to clap that I'm seeing that you're anxious, you're not sleeping, you're strung out, your nails are bit to the brim? No.
Yeah, I think when I look back, I was kind of naive, or I didn't acknowledge the anxiety that was building up in me as a result of juggling 2 careers. And the reason, or a big motivator for why I was pursuing 2 careers, in addition to just maybe not being totally sure of what path I wanted to go down, is the people that I look up to, the LeBron James, the Dwayne Johnson, the Kevin Hart, the Gary Vaynerchuk, guys that are, really building something powerful and meaningful. They all have multiple pursuits. They all have a product line and acting. They all have a their sporting gig and a different product line. They're involved in movies or whatever. And I looked at those guys and I was like, sweet, if I want to build something meaningful, I got to have multiple irons in the fire. And I think I had dreams where I was able to leverage my broadcasting work into real estate work. And I think there was definitely a world where that could have played out down the line. I was never able to get them to compound upon one another or leverage off one another. But that was my vision. And I think I got to the point where maybe I always knew this, but I finally accepted the fact that, okay, yes, those guys have multiple pursuits, but they really became great at one thing, and that one thing built their brand, and then they were able to leverage their brand to build all the other stuff around it. And I view this move to really doubling down on broadcasting and social media as, hey, not that I'll never, ever be involved in real estate ever again, or never, ever have different pursuits, but really from not only just an enjoyment, take the anxiety off, but from a business strategic move that I'm doubling down on this one thing so I can be great at this one thing, and then leverage that and the brand that comes off it, leverage it to build something else down the road. So it was both the anxiety stress component, and I'm so excited to improve my wellness habits this fall, but also you can't be, I didn't want to be just average at many things. I wanted to double down and be great at broadcasting and social media.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I still, though, don't know if we got answers to the anxiety, babe.
How'd you ask it?
I guess, could you give us more color on the reason that you have come to this place of I'm going to choose one? Was because it got unbearable.
Yeah. It's funny because I guess it shows that there's like multiple layers to why I left real estate. And it wasn't just, hey, I got the CW gig. But I think, yeah, I mean, over what? I did real estate for 3.5 years. Really the past year and a half, I realized it was a grind to work out, and it was hard to work out. It was, we cooked 3 dinners the first like 6 months of this year because I viewed it as I didn't have the time to cook, because every hour spent cooking is an hour I'm not doing content or broadcasting or real estate kind of thing. And I just got, it was more of I need to prioritize my health, because I'm just going to get strung out at some point. And that was a rewiring I needed like later on in my 20s.
And I like the relationship to you and your mental health and how that was being affected by this. I think as your wife, I also remember having times where I would just kind of look at you in your days and think to myself, I just don't even know how you did it, because it would just be, I can't even, like, it almost is giving me like college athlete, like the amount of commitment and time and like that you were putting into your everyday. And I would feel like you were just so anxious and strung out. And I remember times like getting emotional because I didn't know how to like help you.
Yeah.
Like there was no way to help you.
Yeah. The most anxious part was not even necessarily the work itself, but it was the going back and forth. And every time I was doing something social media wise, it felt like I was playing hooky from real estate, and I needed to jet back to the office because what is so-and-so thinking if I'm not at my desk, and then vice versa. And that was the most, going back and forth, that was the most anxious part for sure, which I needed to get out of that.
Yeah.
And I think so much like I was wired my entire athletic life to just endure, right? Endure conditioning, endure the times that I'm getting benched, endure the times when I'm throwing an interception and feel shitty about myself, endure. But then I get to a point where I got to look around and I was like, why am I doing this? Like, there's no scoreboard of like, who can endure the most? And trust me, I know I have, I'm very privileged for my endure being career stuff. But I got to a point like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? This is just like no longer smart, because I'm an average broker. My wellness is dropping. My wellness habits are dropping. And then I'm an average content creator, broadcaster. Like, what are you doing here? And no longer just enduring just to endure. Work doesn't need to be tough just because work's supposed to be tough. Like, that's how I used to view it, and almost like giving myself permission now to enjoy my day-to-day and not just enjoy when it's the weekends and I'm out with you or out with friends or out with family.
We had a lot of conversations about that and trying to have the realization that the current like work setting should not be approached the way that we approach teams or we approach coaches. Like, a boss in work is not the equivalent of the coach we had when we were 18 and we couldn't talk back and we couldn't stand up for ourselves, you know, and the colleagues at work are not the teammates that were in the fire with us saying we're all here for the same reason. They're there to put food on the table for their family. They don't give a rat's ass about you and like what, you know what I'm saying? Like, they do, but they don't. I'm just talking at a high level for everyone. Like, I think I was kind of in your ear, like, this is your life. You could do whatever you want. If you want to take Friday off because you are prepping for the game you're calling on whatever day, like, so be it. And if they have a problem with you, they will call you and have a meeting with you and tell you. But I felt like you were doing a lot of the predicting of like, you know, how do I make sure that, I don't know, like you had a very much a team mindset, which I admire, and like you're such a great person. But I do think that's the unique thing about people building their careers and their life is it doesn't have to be exactly the same as someone else. And you're working with a lot of people who live and breathe real estate, and they can't fathom that there's another pursuit or that there's something else you want to do, or maybe they just never thought of it. I'm not saying it's like less than or it's not as good, but they might not understand. I talked about this on actually my solo episode last week. Like, people are just going to view things differently. Like, inherently, it's just different to them. They just think, oh, absolutely, you go 100% in the line of real estate. And then other people would say, oh, of course, if you do something like real estate where it's flexible and it's commission and you create your own schedule, why wouldn't you keep a side pursuit and see what could happen?
Yeah. And to your point, the fact that people view it differently, I think that strain wore on me a little bit. Of some people I was like, man, I got to uphold what I'm bringing day in and day out because this person wants this from their junior and I got to look like this to this person. The next person, to your point, like they don't really care. They're here to make a paycheck and they're here to show up. And if Max is doing his thing, sweet, but I don't really care. And I think that guessing game of having to be like, oh, I got to be this to this person and that to that person. And what's that person thinking? It's that team leader in me that I had my entire sports life that was wearing on me a lot in real estate. And I think I got to a point of like, this is just silly. I need to turn the page.
You get to a point where you're waking up dreading the work day.
Yep.
And that I think is key, because when someone's waking up and they're dreading like what's to come and it's already making them anxious, it's just eventually going to take such a toll on your mental health. Like it'll just affect everything.
Yeah, I was really anxious there for a year or so.
Yeah. What were those days like?
Yeah, I think for a while I was unaware. I was not accepting, I think, how much the anxiety was really wearing on me, again, because I was so used to just enduring. And then I would get home and you could see it. I'd get home, I'd change, and it feels like I just like plop down on the couch.
Totally.
And I was like, I'm done. You cook food? Yeah, no shot. I'll just pick up Chipotle. You know what? You wake up the next morning, I know I should work out. I know I should do some things. I just got to go into the office, or like errands that you should have done, yesterday end up you doing 2 weeks later kind of thing. And I was just worn out, and it was hard. I mean, it's the reason why I started seeing Margette, my therapist, a little bit. And yeah, it was years in the making to come to this.
What have you learned about your anxiety through that experience in the work world? Also looking back at how it's affected you your whole life, any big revelations you've had about the root of maybe your anxiousness or some of the thoughts and feelings?
Honestly, this might be funny because this kind of goes like more hardo mode, but when I exercise and I prioritize my like mental well-being, I am less anxious. And when that becomes not a priority and it's all work, and it's packed the calendar, that's where my anxiety gets the absolute worst. I think I also learned, again, to my earlier point, that the thing that caused me, in my opinion, the most anxiety was getting pulled in all different directions. So doing real estate and then doing content and then flying across the country and doing broadcasting. And that's going to be like an obvious statement. But I think I was the type of guy of like, nah, I can handle this. I'm good. I'm a worker. I'm a grinder. And sure, I could, again, endure it, but I was not my best self. I was not not the best son, friend, husband, all that. And that's why I'm so excited to like take this next step, not only because of the broadcasting content specific stuff, but I think I'm literally going to feel better day in and day out.
Yeah.
Again, I would get gassed when it's like, man, I'm running back and forth with both these careers, and I get in the car and I just want to like listen to music, and then I would make myself feel guilty and all that. And yeah, just this constant like rat race of like, I never could get ahead. There was always something to do. No day ever felt like, yep, I got it all done. And not that any day is going to feel like that, but it always felt like I was behind the eight ball for years. And I hope that I can get to a point where I'm ahead of the eight ball. And I think that'll make for a much more enjoyable life. And I think I will literally be better in my career as a result.
So all of this is coming to a head, and you eventually have to make a choice. And I feel like as your wife, it was clear that your heart was calling you back to the game, to broadcasting, to content.
Definitely. Yeah.
I think you just light up when you make a great video and you have a hot take versus you call someone, cold calling them, right?
Yeah.
But there was also a lot of insecurity, I think, at that time, like going to shift again for that third pivot. Can you kind of share more about your thought process?
Yeah, I had tons of insecurity. I mean, the first one for sure was with my real estate bosses, guys that I had good relationships with. I was thinking, if I left real estate, they're going to be like, oh, we always knew this was in the cards for Max. Because that was kind of always when someone saw me on TV or saw me posting a video, it's like, oh, that's Max's passion, and he doesn't really care about real estate. And that was and maybe that's a narrative that I made up, but that the insecurity around what people would think of if I did quit, because I didn't want to be a quitter. I didn't want to be a guy that jumped ship, and people invested in my career. And especially in commercial real estate, it's very much a thing of like at year 3, you see a lot of brokers quit and leave the industry. And I didn't want to fall into that bucket. I had insecurity around, there's a lot of people that are even in my immediate circle that when I say, hey, I'm a content creator, they're always kind of like, what? Like content creators? Like you're an influencer now? And like they know it's a thing, but it's kind of poo-pooed, and it's kind of like, yeah, and I get it because it's hard to relate to. I totally get it. Insecurity around money and that conversation. I think it's easy to walk into a room with your head held high and say, I'm a commercial real estate broker, and people are like, all right, sweet. Versus you walk in a room and be like, I'm a content creator. Oh, well, like, how do you make money? Like all that kind of stuff. So tons of insecurity around that I needed to navigate.
Do you care if we talk a little bit about that piece of it?
Yeah. No, I don't care.
I remember Max and I had conversations about that, like, is the money he would make switching like gonna equate to what we had seen him, bring in real estate? Like when you're married and you're a double income household, obviously those conversations are important. But remember, we chatted and it was like, both of us, I think, wanting to believe in your pursuit of your passion. And I remember thinking if roles were reversed, I would want him to say to me, I want you to do this thing. We literally, I think, had a conversation where like, if you net zero your first year pursuing this broadcasting and content full time, like we'll be okay. And we'll like, if we look at the worst possible scenario, like we'll be okay and it will be okay. Like, but we want you to have that year. We had that conversation. I think that's important too. Like with this type of thing, that's real, And
it's funny because I remember having the conversation too at when I was 23, you were still in college, I believe. You don't always remember this, but like around the fire pit, we had a conversation of like, this is the life we want to live. And we're not going to be shallow and say we have to make a certain amount of money. But if this is the life we want to live and we want to live it comfortably, we have to get going down career paths where we can make a certain income level. Mm-hmm. And so it's funny that like 6 years later, yes, that's still true. I think a lot of the vision we had for our life still aligns, but I don't know if it's just like a maturity thing of you kind of get back and it's like, all right, I am willing to make 80% of what I made in real estate, but if it gives me passion and I'm excited to wake up every day, that's awesome. And that's not even the case. I can make more than what I made in real estate, but it's just a funny like dynamic.
I feel like it's because I didn't know how much my future self was gonna ball out.
True. And that's where like
I'm not as stressed as I was when we first graduated and like had to make our money and like see what like it was gonna be.
True. And don't get me wrong, it's a total luxury being able to be married to you and have a dual income household, and you are very much the breadwinner in our relationship.
No, that's not what
it is easier to make this jump. It's not the whole equation, but it's not naive to me. It's not lost upon me that if it was a different dynamic.
But that's part of marriage. And I think there could be a time in the future where like, I don't know, maybe I'll get canceled. Maybe I'm not hot, or maybe no one wants to work with me. And I need to be on your flotation device, like whatever,
Yeah.
But I think both of us were aligned and we want you to have, passion and feel good about your work. And that was a worst case scenario conversation. You are going to be fine. And it's been really cool to see how once you fully open yourself up, the universe is kind of like waiting for that in a sense.
And totally. And that's why I'm lucky to be married to you, because I have seen firsthand the opportunity, both career-wise, relationship-wise, and financially, that social media can bring about. And I think a lot of my colleagues in the broadcasting world don't understand that and therefore don't invest in social. I think it's a missed opportunity, but I'm lucky to be married to you because I saw it firsthand. It's like, yo, you can do that in this industry. So it became a more viable like business pursuit versus if I had not had that exposure to you. I think the prospects of being a content creator full time would have been harder to wrap my head around.
Mm-hmm. You got to see a lot of the behind the scenes.
Totally.
And you already knew that. And I think, and you've been a huge help to me. I tell you all the time, my success is your success. I mean, first of all, you're in a lot of my videos now, but also like you from the beginning have always helped me like pick out a good social clip and a great podcast title. Like I learned so much from you and what you learned with Gary and with Lewis. Anyways, you were talking about your insecurities. you overcome them. We have a lot of conversations. You are in therapy, which is great. You're talking it over in therapy. We're talking it over. You're smiling.
So I go to therapy once a month, and I have for a few years now. Literally the past year, I think every single therapy session for me was about my career. We'd get into other stuff, and I laugh with her about it, but it very much was a slow evolution of wrapping my head around the fact that juggling these two careers is not realistic, and I finally made the jump. And so it was not just a snap the fingers, wake up, turn in my 2 weeks notice, I'm gone. It was very much a year, 18-month process to get to finally making that jump. So I guess if you're listening to that, navigating your own career transition, it takes time. But once you know, it took me a while to get to a point where I knew I needed to make the jump. I like to think I did it pretty quickly. Probably did it within a month or two. Maybe I'm giving myself too much credit, but
once you felt confident, once you were like, this is what I'm going to do, which took a while to get you there, then you were like, okay, let's do it. So I think that's important too. You have those conversations with these people at work, and how did it go? What did you find out?
Surprise, surprise. They were totally supportive. They were amazing.
No one called you a quitter.
No one called me a quitter.
No one looked down on you.
And real estate's interesting too. We're fingers crossed, I'm set to get paid on things this fall that I put under contract 18 months ago, and the industry's weird like that. And so there's very much a world where they could have squeezed me out of paychecks and money and all that. And I mean, we'll see, but there's appears to be no issues there. I'm going to get paid and all that stuff. And so they've been great. And it's just a funny reminder of Max, these storylines that I create in my head are just that. They're storylines. I'm putting judgment on things that I don't know if that's actually the case. And all that anxiety that I built up about what so-and-so thought about me or what so-and-so is going to think, they just didn't care.
Yeah.
They're good people, and they just didn't care.
Right. Yeah. I think that's so important because we all are guilty of that, babe. We are all oh my God, this person's going to react this way, and they're going to think this. And it's just wild looking back at how much of the anxiety was about other people's opinions. And then when you do go in, you're like, wait, that's it? And they're throwing you a goodbye party?
Yeah, it took me a farewell lunch.
Right. Everyone can be nicer, happy for you. And that's the best case scenario. There are times where people probably are going to get whatever. Someone's not going to be for it. And that's okay. It's your life. You're living. You have to be the one that goes to bed every night and live your life. So what matters most is how you feel.
Totally.
And when you did this, you did not even know you would have this full package with the CW network. So you took this leap saying, I'm just going to invest my time here. I believe in myself. I've gained 100,000 followers on TikTok. That was something Max was always building on the side. It's a major accomplishment. And you trusted what you had built and you wanted to go all in. And within a month of doing that, you had auditions, you had some important phone calls, and now this major opportunity.
Yeah. So on social media, for people that follow me, it looks like I got the CW opportunity, which again, I'll be calling 15 games this season and traveling to the East Coast. It looks like I got the opportunity and then quit real estate. But the reality is, and if you made it this far in the pod, you're a true OG. The reality is I actually stepped away from real estate 2 weeks before the CW opportunity came about. I knew there was a world. I knew I was in the running, so I knew there was a world it would happen. But I actually broke off before that. And then just from an optic standpoint, it looks like, that's why I'm doing it. But I had enough momentum on the social media side that I said, I need to go all in on this regardless in the fall. And if I get to call games and travel in the fall, that's amazing. That's my North Star. That's my favorite thing to do in the business. But if it doesn't work out, I still need to break off. And it's just funny how that timing aligned. It was a sign.
And how are you feeling?
I'm so excited. The biggest emotion is just relieved. I think there's excitement for sure, but just relieved for all the anxiety conversation we had. And I'm looking forward to just being a better version of myself this fall. I was very much strung out in years past, and that's one thing that's a misconception. I still think I'm going to work the same volume, genuinely. I'm going to pour the real estate hours into football. But I won't be as running like a chicken with my head cut off, and I'll be able to just be a better version of myself and show up better for my relationships and my work. And hopefully, next time I'm on this pod, we're seeing a lot of success.
Yeah, we will be. I'm literally going to be the biggest ACC fan watching every game. I'm so excited. And I'm so happy for you. I feel like you have grown so much, like your self-compassion for yourself, your confidence. I think letting go of some of the unhelpful things from sport, I think you're the best broadcaster in the world. I believe in
Thanks,
you and think the highest of you. I just think you're so great at what you do. You are going to absolutely blow up.
I appreciate that. It is cool looking back, and it'll be kind of bookmarked by the podcast episode we did, the one about my career leaving football to then now. That over that time frame, my love for football's come back. I'm excited to watch football. I was not that way when I left the game, and I used to be that way. I was the high school kid that could watch 12 hours of NFL Network every single day. I lost that love. I think that's natural. I've tried to give myself grace to, those feelings are natural when you fall short. But it's cool to look back and see it come full circle.
I'm so happy for you. And now you're 29 and you have a job that is so sick and so amazing. And it took you most of your 20s to have this opportunity.
My 21-year-old self that was the backup quarterback at USC doing play-by-play to the 2-minute drill on Friday. That kid, I think, would have hoped he was still playing in the NFL right now, but he'd look and be proud that I was a color commentator calling national televised games 8 years later. So it's cool looking back on that.
I'm so happy for you. I'm going to have a big watch party for one of your first games. We're going to get all the Real Pod listeners and VIPers to be the biggest ACC fans.
I wonder how much overlap there is between the Real Pod and the football fans.
A lot now with Tay and Trav.
True.
But I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy for you. A whole other podcast is Max being gone for 15 weekends in a row. But I literally, it's not even a thought. It's not even a factor because we want each other to pursue our dreams and it's fine. I'll be having lots of sleepovers with my friends. I'll get to go visit my girlies in San Fran and my mans gets to do what he loves. So it'll be great.
There we go. I love you. Thanks for having me on. And thanks for setting the blueprint for what it looks like to be a creator and supporting what I want to do.
Oh my God, I love you. Yay.
I love you too.